We want to welcome everyone today. This is a training on classical education here at Excelsior Academy. Before we begin, I want to focus on our touchstone standards of how teachers can become effective or show effectiveness in a classical education school. So our goal again is we want all of our teachers to be effective, and these standards are going to help provide key terms to recognize and assess your level of effectiveness when it comes to a classical education. Now, a highly effective teacher is one that's going to be a leader in a classical education. They innovate, they refine, and they shape the ideas that come within the school community. A teacher who's effective applies classical principles, uses the trivium, integrates cross-curricular ideas, and engages students in their classroom when it comes to a classical model. And so these are the goals of areas we want to be, but I've put these other terms in red to help provide a focused language framework for you on how to assess yourself. Now, the vision of Excelsior Academy is to educate students with a broad classical foundation of knowledge, assisting them in opportunities to learn at their challenge level in a intentionally inviting environment to help students acquire a lifelong love of learning. And really that is our ultimate goal, is to help our students acquire that lifelong love of learning. And the classical foundation is the way in which we're able to do that. And so as we go through today, I want you to think about how you can be using those aspects of a classical education to build that lifelong love of learning. Now, the structure of a classical education is built up of the trivium, which we'll review in a moment, as well as virtue. Those four areas, virtue, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the delivery is done through the pedagogy of Excelsior Academy, which is direct instruction. That delivery method is what allows you as a teacher to challenge and stretch students and prepare them for that lifelong love of learning. Now, the trivium of classical education, it is a developmental process. It's a leveled approach in which our students, depending on their age levels, are getting exposed to and learning. However, it doesn't end at the end of each level. For example, our grammar stage is usually kindergarten through about 5th grade. However, even within the logic stage in 6th through 9th grade, grammar still has to be taught. Basic knowledge and understanding still has to be delivered. And so this isn't one where we leave behind grammar and focus solely on logic, but it's a building and continuing to use in those areas. The last area is rhetoric. And in rhetoric, this tends to be seen in the high school levels up through 12th grade and into college, where individual students are really learning how to communicate their ideas and make solid arguments backed with evidence, and they're really expanding themselves in preparation for the world. Now, virtue is one of the key areas we want to help our students develop the traits that will make them positive aspects in society. And so as we look at some of these traits, self-discipline, respect, responsibility, wisdom, prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance, flexible, adaptive, goodness, these are not terms that are posted on the wall. These are terms that are pointed out in your lessons, in your review of literature, in your discussions of behaviors, in sports programs. All of those are what help build a good, virtuous member of society. As a school, our virtue or character education we have is the 7 habits of highly effective people. And again, those habits are examples of some of those characteristics that we want to see students display. Now, getting into the trivium, beginning first in the grammar stage, as I said before, this is usually K through 5. The grammar stage really is the building of the foundation of learning for students. This is where students are memorizing facts, memorizing dates, understanding timelines, and reading a text, all of those key things that are going to help them as they begin to reflect and analyze topics and conversations when they get into the logic stage. That's why before they can learn how to analyze a topic in, say, a U.S. history class, there has to be a base level of knowledge already built. And that building may happen in class, or it may have happened in previous years, but those building blocks do need to be in place. So as you can see, some of the terms to use and as examples: building blocks, the mechanics of how things work, operations, concepts, hanging pegs. I've always loved this term because it's pegs that we can use to organize information on. We think of an example of a peg. You have the Civil War. You can hang on there those involved in it. You can hang on there reasons why it may have happened. You can hang on there locations and timelines. You can hang on there the build up to it and the aftermath of it. There's so many things, but you have that center point that helps you focus. You want to include facts, the foundations of concepts. Memorization is a big part of it. In the math, you have your multiplication tables, as math teachers know. If students don't have that mastered, they can still be successful, but it's a lot harder when they get into the upper level math classes. We want to explore. This is where you're going to be using a lot of repetition, your choral response, lots of practice, the fundamentals. It's scripted, recitation, reproduce. These are areas in which there is not a lot of self-thinking, but a lot of just repetition and learning the basics of what a student should know in your area. Now, in the middle school, this is really where we get into the main focus, and that is logic. In logic, this is where students are beginning to take that base knowledge and use it for something and be able to master and apply these concepts to themselves. They are going to start learning how to argue. We know teenagers are great at arguing, but oftentimes they don't know how to use it. And so in logic, we begin to teach them how to argue with themselves, how to analyze. And so looking at these terms, these all lay out great ways as a teacher when you're developing lessons and activities that can help them become logic-based. Cause and effect, organizing. So now they're going to organize a lot of these concepts into structured ideas and beginning to make arguments of why they think something is the way it is. Creating relationships between eras and time periods, or between different types of activities or scientific content. Assessing the value of something, learning independence, learning to analyze content engagement. So really engaging in the material, not just memorizing it, but really understanding how to use and value it. We have to, in logic, we have to still scaffold for them and build them up to those areas. They're learning self-discipline. They're learning to question. They're looking for understanding and reasoning. They're making some arguments. They want to look at the soundness of their arguments. It's systematic. They're using their own autonomy to start developing these. They're not being spoon-fed their arguments. They're learning to come up with conclusions for themselves of what they conclude about issues. They're accountable, responsibility for not only for their actions, but responsibility for other people's actions and how they need to take responsibility. Learning different principles and how those apply to bigger areas. Starting to learn how to debate. All of these terms help define what happens within that logic stage. And again, it's trying to help students process all of this information they've learned in the grammar stage, process it, organize it, and find out the value and how to use it. And this begins to start to develop that lifelong love of learning, because now they get to see the whys. They get to see why something is important to know and how to apply it instead of just memorizing those details. With rhetoric, this is where we don't see too much of this in the middle school. This is mainly in the high school because with the trivium, it does follow the developmental levels of children. You can argue with a 3-year-old, but it's not an argument. because they still don't have the intellectual capabilities to make those arguments. That comes with brain development. And so in high school, this is where students are going to be more prepared to learn how to argue and debate and communicate in a way that is going to convince or inform others. And in the middle school, this is just starting to happen as they learn how to understand what they know and what they believe. And hopefully in middle school, they already have those ideas and they're really trying to communicate those to others. But in rhetoric, we're wanting to see expression, originality, creation, writing, communication, critical thinking, refining, coherence, articulate, eloquence, synthesis, present effectively, wisdom, integration. All of these terms are ways in which learners show that they are at a far more advanced level. And that is found within that rhetoric model. It's the rules of persuasion and debating with others, because that's what they're trying to do, is convince others of their ideas or conclusions. Their originality is actual truth and factual information, but more than that, that their conclusions are authentic and that they're wanting to show that. And that's where middle schoolers still are not at that developmental age often to be able to do that. Now our pedagogy, direct instruction, these are a lot of terms and areas that help us better understand what direct instruction is. Direct instruction is not just the teacher standing up front lecturing the entire class period, giving an assignment, and students go home. There are active and engaging parts that happen with the lesson, but the key aspect of a direct instruction is the teacher leads the classroom. The teacher is in control and guides, whether it's a discussion, whether it's a Socratic seminar, whatever it may be, the teacher is the one that's guiding that instruction. And so looking at the pedagogy, less is more. Oftentimes we think we need to fill our students with so much information because that's what we already know. But sometimes it's better to start with less, and they will begin to receive that information as they are exploring on their own. Take time to have them contemplate. And emphasize in your classes a level of positive urgency, where we're going quick because all of these things are important, but we want to do it in a positive way that builds students. Teacher-led classroom, lots of repetition. Morals or virtues are being exemplified by the teacher. Teachers are being proactive in their planning and making sure that procedures and their lesson plans are organized and ready to go. They're developing wonder and curiosity in students. It's a method-based approach. There's methods to the things that you're doing, and it's not just free-range chickens roaming the room. Pencil to paper. Students are writing. Students are creating and exploring through the ideas that they're doing. You have a unified visioning in class. Your students know where you're going. Everything is carefully planned. Things are assessed so that you know your students are growing and learning. Coaching is going to be occurring. Let's see. I think that kind of wisdom is a big part in there. Explore. One thing you'll notice in these presentations, these pictures I had AI create them for me, and for some reason they couldn't take words and spell things completely correctly. But it was the way that I could best exemplify a lot of what was happening. Now, with all of this, the biggest thing is I go back to the story of how you eat an elephant. And it's really one bite at a time. As you explore classical education, direct instruction, you're not going to be able to apply it all at once, and you're not going to understand it all at once. It's a constant learning part of life. And so my encouragement for you is you continue to learn and you continue to approach classical education with that attitude of how can I develop a better understanding? How can I develop more? Not that I have reached an endpoint or I've reached a finish line. That's not what you'll see in this. Well, that's my video and training for classical education, and we will see more as we continue the year.